Because you have such an eye for talent, which wrestlers do you see as the next big stars in about 5 years from now? Who do you keep your eye on?
I've said this, and I said it in private conversations. The little crybaby himself, MJF, that whines and bitches his way to the top. He just does things, guys, candidly, um, better than you can do it, and he does stuff that you just can't be done.
How do you view the recent rebranding of Impact Wrestling back to TNA?
It's about time. We named the show, the television show, Impact. Impact turned into the name of Impact Wrestling, but it was always confusing.
People still shout Slapnuts. They chant Slapnuts at you today, whether it's around the street or actually at an event. How did the catchphrase originate?
We'll call it in the 90s, the Attitude Era, and the era of catchphrases. I'll never forget.
No, very serious question here, Mr. Jarrett. Have you spoken to BeetleJuice after your guitar shot on him in WCW? From right now,
I knew here on the Velvet Rope she would come with the hard-hitting questions. Have I spoken to BeetleJuice?
Well, welcome to the show, Double J, our first guest ever. The
You
honor of
must
being
pull
here.
some strings, Val. No, how are you? I'm excited to be here, doing my podcast every week. I never dreamed that I'd, enjoy it so much. I can remember from the day that Conrad asked me, "Hey man, let's do a podcast." I told him no, actually for a couple of years. People don't want that, but look where we are now, going way, way back in time, Val, when we first started working together, and here we are now. I guess I'm on the debut episode. How about it?
Yeah. You are. We're saving the first for the best. And I have to tell you, it was so exciting for me because people that are watching at home, I mean, this is the man who, it led me into a 9-year career in TNA wrestling. I don't remember this, Jeff, but you signed my contract. Literally, you were like on the ring apron and I was 18 and you were so amazing to give me that chance and to, keep me employed and, have me learn so much about the business through you, through Jeremy Borash, Sahadi, Mike Weber. But I want to say, first of all, thank you for that because I would not be still doing this.
Traveling around the world, and here we are. No, it's we had fun back in those days, and I don't have to tell you, but a lot of folks now in the podcast days, they know kind of the little engine that TNA started all those years ago and still going. What was it, 23 years? They just those guys celebrated 23 years, so pretty cool to see.
Very cool. Happy birthday, TNA. And of course, still a fan, still watching the product. But you mentioned traveling around the world. So I have to tell you, I was lucky enough to attend the last 2 AEW shows here in London. And the vibe, let me tell you, it was electric. The attendance was amazing. And the cards were absolutely stacked. But obviously, you're no stranger to this sort of big scale event. But I have to wonder, what are your thoughts were on the massive UK turnout for this event and the overall thoughts backstage were for how popular it was and
Oh, wow.
the
Well,
both of the shows did.
you know my history, and so I could this to answer this question, I could really give you a long form. So I'll do my best to keep it short, but I have been not just a fan, but really dialed into the UK audience for years and years and years. The first time I went over there was in '94 for at that time the WWF. And just know the history of the market, going back to the World of Sport days, Big Daddy and Haystacks and all that kind of stuff, and through the years. But you specifically asked about the AEW, and for me, from a man, it depends on what hat I'm wearing that could be to describe it. But I can tell you this: as a talent, last year, the second time we were in the stadium, for me, I was a surprise entrance. And earlier, I'd done the pre-show 0 Hour and talked about it, so that was cool, and we got to do all the hype, but in the back of my mind, knowing that I was gonna be walking out as, I guess you could say, one of the surprise entrants in the gauntlet that, I never dreamed in my wildest years at the stage of I am in my career, last year, I was in my 38th year. I'm in my 39th now. Next year will be my 40th active year, but in year 38, to go out in front of that crowd and receive that welcome and receive that response. It was a truly bucket list, and in one instance, it truly shocked me, but on the other, the UK audience is so educated and know their history. And look, I've been going over there, like I just said, since 1994 was my first trip over to wrestle. in my TNA years and, us dealing with Challenge TV and the exposure and just all the ins and outs and ups and downs, and I've done a spoken word tour, in the United Kingdom. So, that's what's special about it, that, going back to the Martin and the Goldsmith days when they brought SummerSlam years ago, the UK audience is has had their wrestling, there's 3rd and 4th generation fans, and so, when AEW, specifically Tony, made the, statement, the announcement that we're going to not Wembley Arena, Wembley Stadium year 1, and to sell, 80,000 tickets and, just a massive, massive talk about planting the flag in the ground. So I just can't say enough good things about the UK and the reception, and I would be remiss without saying shout out to John Williams and ITV and the entire team. What fantastic partners, because they are the ones at the end of the day, the AEW brand, up and running and, year 6, headed on year 7, but without great distribution partners like ITV and the market now, as well as anyone, to have that kind of partner, it just says so much about the brand and, we got the Forbidden Door coming up and the Glasgow show and all that kind of stuff, but, that market will always be near and dear to me for so many reasons. Had a lot of good times, but man, oh man, they love their wrestling, and I love them back.
Yeah. Oh, well, I don't wanna speak on behalf of the UK as I'm just an American living here, but the feeling is mutual, and it's been so cool to see in any, showcase, in any company, the evolution of Jeff Jarrett has been incredible to watch, and seeing you evolve and just get better and better, it's absolutely amazing. But let's talk about AEW and the talent that was there, not only at both of those shows, but the current roster right now. Because you have such an eye for talent, which wrestlers do you see as the next big stars in about 5
Oh,
years from
well,
now?
the
Who do you have
entire
your eye on?
I've said this, and I said it in private conversations before I even arrived here. The summer, during the pandemic and as things were, the business was in such a flux, and I said this many times on interviews that when you look at the AEW roster, it is by far the most diversified roster I've ever been a part of. I mean, obviously, US talent and Canadian, but then you do the lucha, the guys from Mexico, Japan, Will Ospreay at the very top of the list. So we have our Brits involved. We have just you name it, all around the world. My partner Satnam Singh, 1 billion from India. So, but anyway, every genre, every style of wrestling is really represented, males and females, young, seasoned vets, legends, everything in between. You go back and look at Sting's last match and this promotion and Tony specifically, the way that was presented and carried off, and so all things considered, I've just never seen a roster, quite like AEW. Bryan Danielson, just saw him the other night. I think, he has 0 peers, in a lot of ways, one of the best storytellers ever. But who do I have my eye on? It's hard to name any particular one. It goes without saying, the little crybaby himself, MJF, that whines and bitches his way to the top. No, super talented guy. He is. I think he still has a lot to learn, but that is anybody that is in their 20s. It just goes without saying. There are a number of talent, and when you try to hold me down to one, I just think it's so hard that when you look at, I'll just say kind of some recent folks that came in, Speedball Mike Bailey, Josh Alexander, they're getting their opportunity to step out. Look, Ricochet, I've known him for quite some time, worked with him, multiple places, and his arrival, and you just kind of see the growth. And I'll just say from a persona, not his in-ring work, because it's always been, he's done things that candidly guys can't do. Like a young AJ Styles. I used to tell folks, he just does things, guys, candidly, uh, better than you can do it, and he does stuff that you just can't be done. And Ricochet's in that line. Um, so young upstart guys, man, you could go all the way down the list, males and females. I just think of Megan Bayne entering the company, and she's really made a statement. Um, just the other night, he's certainly not new at all, but getting the opportunity to say Mystico perform on the US stage is massive. So, again, it just goes back to the diversity of the roster. I wish I could name you one, but I really can't.
We have to ask, I mean, we're talking about AEW and TNA. How do you view the recent rebranding of Impact Wrestling back to TNA, a name that you've said you're always emotionally
Well,
tied to?
when
Understandable.
and I
Yeah.
said this on my podcast, when Conrad essentially said something to the effect, "Hey, what do you think about, them going back to the name TNA?" And my initial gut, honest, response was, "It's about time." And I say that in that when I went back in 2017, I pitched that internally a couple of different ways, met with strong resistance, kind of, obviously global force, but I have always looked and yes, I was a part, of, so many things in the beginning, but, uh, we named the show, the television show, Impact. When Impact turned into the name of Impact Wrestling, I always thought that not just kind of a new fan, but it was always confusing. You were there, 2010, 11, and 12 when we went from TNA to TNA Impact Wrestling to dropping TNA, and it was called Impact Wrestling. The old promoter line, if you confuse them, you lose them, I think could not have been any truer. And so I really think that was one of the things that were a real, I don't just say a negative, but I think it was brand, damage. When you took the six-sided ring away, when
Mm.
you went from TNA Wrestling, which it was built on, for 9 plus years and took the name away, and then, obviously losing certain talents through the years, there was some real damage done, and I couldn't be happier to kinda see how things have, uh, in no uncertain terms, turned around. And from the early days of AEW, you saw a working relationship with TNA. And I think when as I referenced earlier, we're coming over Forbidden Door, and that is CMLL and New Japan Pro Wrestling. So it goes without saying, my mindset of everyone working together, because at the end of the day, um, first and foremost, the wrestling fan has to win. You have to engage them in the product. And if you can have cross promotional alliances, it's a win, win, win. And I know you have to be carefully thought out, and then you get into I call it the minutia of wins and losses and this and brand protection and all that. But at the end of the day, the more promotions can work together, it's no different than the music business. When certain artists are on certain labels, they don't look at it and say, "Oh, I'm on this label, I can't work." Now you have preferred artists that you work with in the music industry, but if a talent is on another label, it doesn't prevent certain artists, I'll say, from doing a duet. And I think it kind of goes the exact same way in professional wrestling. The more that you can work together. So I think there's a real upside. All promotions working together is a win-win.
Very well said. Yeah, and I think it's a great time to be a wrestling fan when everyone's working together more than it was when I started watching wrestling. I think that's so cool. It's such a cool evolution. But we're going to talk about baby faces and heels. I mean, I've always kind of gravitated more towards the heel. But currently in AEW, you've been embracing the role of the last outlaw, mixing it up with a new generation of stars. But how do you adapt your classic heel persona to connect with a more modern audience? And they seem to kind of be more interested in the bad guy. I feel like that's kind of the cool thing to do nowadays, to embrace the heel more than
You
you
know,
did before. What are your
I'll
thoughts?
say this because, you go back to the early days of the NWO, they were quote unquote cool heels. And I think you really walk a fine line, and we'll call it the tweeners. And that's kind of a term used. But at the end of the day, the last outlaw, when I faced Hangman in the Owen tournament, and I just, essentially wasn't much of an interview or a promo. It was, I just poured my heart out on a real life situation. The people gravitated toward, saying, "Hey, I like this last outlaw." The what but, a month prior to that, the last outlaw was a heel and maybe did some things they weren't at the end of the day like. But I always draw it back to the basics that you can have move sets, you can have ring psychology, which is a term used that I think some people want to latch on to old school versus new school. And hey, we used to do it that way. We do it this way right now. And look, I'm up for all the above. I truly mean that. I truly mean that um, you can denote old school, new school, but at the end of the day, the very, very basics of what we do will never change. It's emotionally connecting with your audience. You can do that from promos, you can do that from moves, you can do that from mannerisms, you can do that from storylines, you can do it through it so many mechanisms, social media, television, whether it's the linear broadcast or digital or whatever it may be. Now, at the end of the day, it's all about connecting with your audience. That will never change, and that is something that I think at times some folks just completely miss that, in that, um, I think there's a reason why I'm heading into my 40th year, in an active, role, is that and I've been taught this way, that I never lost sight of that's what you have to do no matter what, emotionally connect with your audience.
Yes. Yeah, I think some people overthink it, but you've always had the exact right way of making the fans love or hate you, to their choice. But, speaking of fans, we're gonna go to our first ever fan question here on Velvet Ropes. Thank you to Sean from X. He wants to know, very serious question here, Mr. Jarrett. Have you spoken to Beetlejuice after your guitar shot on him in WCW at from right now?
I knew here on the Velvet Ropes you would come with the hard-hitting questions. Have I spoken to Beetlejuice? No, I haven't, and man, oh man, I wish I had, because, I've done a lot of guitar shots through the years, and, whether it was Sting or Flair, or we'll call it any, legend, Hall of Famer, professional wrestler, the one that gets talked about the most, and there are a few that rank right up there that I always get brought up. Fabulous Moolah is one. Gary Coleman is another. Literally, nothing outranks my man Beetle. I'd love to do a photo op with him at some conventions. I think that would be a lot of fun for fans, because look, that meme, if you will, or that GIF or that little clip continues. It is very active on social media. I can remember one of my daughters coming home like, "Dad, who is this?" They had no context of who Beetle was, but, my man Beetle, the legend that he is, I wish him nothing but the best, and I'd love to chat with him one day, but, no, I have not spoken with my man Beetle.
Isn't that sweet? It's a full circle moment here on Velvet Ropes. Well, speaking of your adoring fans, I want a backstory on this because people still shout slap nuts. They chant slap nuts at you today, whether it's around the street or actually at an event. How did the catchphrase originate? And did you ever imagine it would be so, strong and have such staying power throughout your
Yeah, well, and that was a, WCW when, and that was one of those things that, like most organic things that just kind of, catch on instantaneously, that, my grandmother used to call folks slappies. Yep, Val, don't cut your eyes, because like my grandmother, no, but, he promoted, and for what those that know, Teeny, her real name Christine Jarrett, but she's my grandmother. She did everything but wrestle. She's what we would call today a CFO, but she used to call folks that would, be around the business, that she used to say, "He's a slappy," because, what's that mean? Well, they slap their gums, because they know more and more about less and less every day. Somebody that just talked a lot is so all this. But, we'll call it in the 90s, the Attitude Era and the era of catchphrases, I'll never forget me, saying, the words, "This guy's nothing but a slap nut." And, it was about 2 or 3 weeks later, we were in Detroit, and, up in the, we'll call them, the cheap seats. There were 7 or 8, 9 guys, however many, letters there are in slap nuts. They had the signs up, each of them had a letter and all that, and I got called in that night by Standards and Practices at WCW, and, I we don't have all the phone cameras today, but I've loved to have had this documented, because they brought me in, sat me down, and said, "Hey, we've got to ask you something. We need to really figure out, and we need your help. We need to know how to proceed with this. What is a slap nut?" So, they were concerned and didn't know if it should be on TV or not on TV, and then I kind of explained to them. I'm like, "Hey, not any slang term that is a four-letter word by any stretch of the imagination, but it caught folks by attention, and they jumped on it, then I jumped on it, became a T-shirt, and it was rocking and rolling there. And still to this day, PWTs.com, you can still get those shirts. But yeah, every now and then I'll wear one on the pod, and always get feedback from it. But Slapnuts has been around for a long time now.
And it has stood the test of time. I appreciate that backstory. Trending now, Slapnuts on X. You believe me. Well, Jeff Jarrett, I have a selfish question for you because when Angel and I talked about doing the show, I said, oh my gosh, I have to ask Jeff a question about one of my favorite knockouts of all time.
Oh gosh.
Karen. Now, I love my divas, I love my knockouts, I love my females in wrestling, but I mostly love managers, as you know. And I have to ask you, not only is Karen amazing and you're amazing, but the two of you together, so iconic, so charismatic, but working alongside your real wife, Karen, how do you balance your work life, your home life, and what's it like working
You know,
directly alongside your
that
spouse?
question, Val, you ought to have her on the velvet ropes in the coming weeks. Because I'd love to hear her
Please.
response. But, especially in Mexico when we would go, like Karen is obviously not anywhere close to being a trained professional wrestler. And, she didn't go to acting school. The thing that I have always thought, removed I'll say my husband cap, because we make it work. We have fun. We travel. Uh, you know, we're, we're in love more today than we were when we first got married. But as far as working together, as in front of the red light, the one thing that I've always said as a producer is that Karen wears her heart on her sleeve and it wears her emotions. At times when the red light's on and she walks through the curtain, she is playing an extension of her personality, and she, like all of us, can really draw that up. But uh, her ability to resonate with an audience and connect, to me, at times, it's been amazing. That's why I think some folks have seen her, as a TNA knockout, and have seen her on AEW TV. And I'll never forget in Vegas when she first really debuted for AEW, the whole arena in Vegas was giving a big "F you, Karen" chant, and it was like the first time she'd really been out in front of the crowd, and that's a credit to her because how she resonates in that she's not playing acting. She's not trying to play wrestler or valet or whatever it is. She's really just being an extension of her that we all like to live vicariously. I'm a huge sports fans and I wish I could play ball like certain pro basketball players or throw a ball or whatever it may be. But she, in her mindset, she gets in there in between her ears and really thinks through, I'm going to play this role, and she plays it so well. But again, I'm going to go back to uh, knowing how to connect emotionally with your audience. And Karen has that innate ability. You can't teach it, you can't coach it, none of that. She has a certain kind of charisma that was a gift of God. And I say that with all sincerity, in that you just cannot manufacture charisma like certain individuals. And she, the delivery of her promo, she never went to acting school, but when you hear a flat out barn burner, blistering promo from Karen Jarrett, you feel it. And that is something that what I've always applauded her for, because you just can't teach it, coach it, or produce it. She's a natural at it.
Absolutely. That intangible quality that you both have then together. Oh boy. Absolutely explosive. Well, a couple more questions for you. I know you're
Love
very
it.
high in demand, a busy man, but one last question about AEW. If someone is unfamiliar with AEW, what would you say stands out amongst other promotions? What makes All Elite Wrestling
You know,
so very special?
it has been termed a couple of different terms: challenger brand, alternative brand. Um, yeah. I mean, we could go down that whole line of, well, I'll call it descriptors. The one thing I have always, and I have different discussions with, I'll say, in my line of work, I'm part of a baseball ownership group. So baseball, those guys are us, if you will, if you want to put that. the very core of they're promoters. I'm in the gaming industry, and you promote games, if you will. But everybody has a certain brand and a uniqueness. When you really dial in AEW, where the best wrestle, in that, the best wrestling match, it is subjective. I get that because what we do is art form. It's like movies or music or whatever it may be. But when people sample it, and come to the show and really see, the art form and the execution, and at the very top, the athleticism, our athleticism is unbelievable. And so you mix that in with the diversified roster from Hall of Famers and legends, all the way down to folks that are just breaking in, or we'll call it on the Ring of Honor level. It truly is the best show on earth when you come out and really, get a good taste of what AEW about. That in-ring product is second to none. Nobody does pay-per-view like AEW wrestling. Nobody.
So well said. Absolutely wishing continued success to everyone in AEW. It's amazing to watch and amazing to see that evolve as well. But last question for you, Mr. Jarrett. So we want to hear more about your podcast, where and when we can see it and hear it. But also what you're looking forward to next. After today, what are you looking forward to professionally and
You know,
personally? What's next
I
for Double J?
was in the gym early this morning, and first things first, I love, I still, whether it's, being a panelist, an analyst on Zero Hour, in-ring work, whatever it may be, I love it more today. I look at it through a different lens. I know I'm very blessed and very fortunate, to have my health, both in both mentally, emotionally, and physical. I think the, mental may be, up for debate if you ask Karen, but no, I love it. I absolutely love the on-screen performing, but, the business side of it, everybody knows, I'm a third generation promoter. And so whether it's with Acclaim, video games, and we've got a ton of news that's going to be making the rounds in Q3 and Q4 this year. My Golden Rule Entertainment, I'm a part of that baseball ownership group. We just acquired our second team, looking at a number of new teams to acquire. That's right up the promotion alley. I always say that I love promoting, and give me something good, and I'll turn it around and make it great, through promotional means, and that is really something I live by. You know, so many different things are going on in my life. I just feel very blessed. But at the end of the day, my podcast, I sit down every week with Conrad, and we talk about whatever stories or talents or, whatever it may be from my 40 or 39-year career. But we also talk about current stuff and have a lot of fun doing it. And that weekly cadence of the podcast is something that I never dreamed, Val, that I would enjoy. But, it's up, and the monetization part of it's great. I'll call it the audience, ad-free shows. We have a great Patreon, um, group, if you will. We really deliver, so much value to it. But, I just have a lot going on. I'm very thankful for where I'm at, in life today.
Well, I said it before, I'll say it again. What an amazing time to be a wrestling fan, to be spoiled for choice, with AEW, WWE, TNA, so many more. But obviously, to have access to, your amazing mind for the business and be able to hear it on a podcast, I mean, that is just invaluable. So thank you for that. Thank you. How do I even say thank you for almost 40 years of contributing to this amazing business that we all love? Jeff Jarrett, you're a legend, one of my personal favorites, one of the most well respected people in wrestling for a reason, and a Hall of
You're me too nice. I know the real you're not that nice.
I'm gonna go watch some more Heel Karen, and I'm gonna
Well,
come back
this
and have a totally different.
now that is good stuff. Yes.
Yes, but let Karen know she's welcome anytime here on Velvet Ropes. Jeff Jarrett, wishing you continued success. Love to the
Thanks, pal.
family,
Appreciate
and we'll
it.
talk to you soon.